Thanks everyone for joining. Welcome to week 2 of our session. Just waiting for our first guest. We've got a lineup today, so I feel like I've got to contain myself. Hi, you're okay. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation. Just as you've called, the lights dimmed for some reason. How are you?
I know it's making it more like a lounge session rather than a party interview.
I'm going to try and find a better spot. How's it going?
Not bad. It's been a crazy day, but it's good. My internet's working. I knew how to turn it on this time.
Great.
I wasn't recording putting on my makeup, so I feel like that's a plus.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And so thank you for joining us for kicking off our week 2 of our Hidden Heroes.
Thank you.
And it's an opportunity for me to talk to you a bit about what you've been doing in Greenwich Borough, and you can share your story with our followers. And you came up quite quickly on in our list of people we'd like to talk to about the hidden work we've been doing in Greenwich for quite some time. And you've got a really interesting bio. So I'm going to try and keep myself contained so I can not take all of your evening with asking you loads of questions. But you've been doing a lot of work in Greenwich for a long time. And as a business owner and a very inspirational woman, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, particularly in the last year?
Sure. So I'm joining you on my PR consultancy's IG. So I've been running a PR and communications consultancy for a long time. I'm going to say over a decade. And my clients, majority of my clients actually, I don't even know if I've ever had a client based in Greenwich. Most of my clients have been across London and global. So whilst I've been based in Greenwich as a borough, the majority of my clients have been everywhere you can think of. So I deal with a lot of public relations, media relations, personal branding, and media training for clients, as well as crisis management.
So what's been kind of the challenges in this last year then, doing that kind of work?
Well, actually, I'm in a good place, and I say that cautiously and out of respect and honour for those who haven't had it as good as myself. But I've been very lucky because I've really worked remotely and I've always integrated digital into my work. Things have run quite smoothly. I've had a really good selection of clients consistently coming to me. A lot of the only challenge really has been on the media side. So a lot of my work has been to try and get clients into the press, right? And that's obviously changed over the past year because a lot of newsrooms have shrunk, journalists have furloughed. So obviously when we're sending press releases out, it's not always been as receptive. The response hasn't been as receptive. But overall, especially for the online platforms, it's been fine. I conduct a lot of training for clients, media training. The crisis piece of work, the crisis where, if a client does something wrong or there's an issue with their reputation, overall, that they come to me for kind of help to engage. And that's actually done pretty well. I've done pretty well with that side of things. But overall, I'm doing really well.
I can imagine that piece of work gets bigger and bigger because as people like me have been let loose on Instagram Live, I guess lots of more incidents happen. So the demand of that must be really challenging.
Yeah, it's been challenging. And what's really interesting is, unfortunately, because so even though I have been used to working remotely and I've always worked quite smartly, because there's no outlet. So because things are closed, you find yourself working more because obviously you can't go to a restaurant or a bar to unwind. You can't visit friends. Yes, I know we've got these social media. We've got phone calls. We can make our video calls, but that face to face of catching up with friends it means it's important to make sure we look after our mental health, and especially in a fast-paced sector like PR, it's really important to find ways of just shutting off and making sure that I don't consume too much and add too much pressure on myself.
That's that. I was going to talk to you about well-being, but that sounds like you're really making sure that life-work balance is manageable.
It is, and I think so. I think so.
So what kind of things do you do to just kind of relax, and because your work is quite pressured, what kind of things do you do personally?
For the most part, I binge. So I binge more and more on Netflix or Prime. I haven't got a problem with escaping via TV. I also read. I love food, so cooking helps. And just catching up with friends, I think, really helps. And just quiet time, daily walks, exercise, that really helps.
Yeah, brilliant. I've got to ask, how did you get into this particular niche of work, and how did you manage that with like your own demands?
Yeah, so I started my business, originally it was marketing and business development, and then I realized there was a more of a demand for the PR side of things and the media side of things, so I adapted my business. And it was very much hands-on, me kind of creating this. It was a very entrepreneurial activity, me creating this business from scratch, and starting it from scratch, and just using my own funds, putting my own funds to invest in my business. But yeah, I in terms of juggling, it's been hard because I started at a time none of my friends had the same journey. And whilst I've always been somebody who just does things for myself, in the sense of I don't worry too much about what people are doing in that sense, it could be quite lonely because nobody quite understood. It's so interesting now, you know, we're all working from home, most of us working from home. A lot of my friends for years were like, oh, you're not really working, are you? And then suddenly it's so funny seeing how quickly people have had to adapt, and suddenly realizing, yeah, you do have to work. Like, I don't know what people thought I was doing when I was making money, paying a mortgage and like shopping. I don't know what people thought I was doing, but it's really interesting that people are seeing it from my perspective now. But yeah, it was lonely. The entrepreneurial journey, especially as a woman in this country, it was tough. I know why I decided to do that, but it's paying off.
Definitely. It's really interesting because I think what you talk about being lonely, I think that's I've never worked at home before. Well, not unless I was on like totally when I was doing a bits and bobs, but I've never worked at home like this before, and like 5 hour chunks go by and you're still there at your screen, and that separation between your world and your working world just seems to disappear.
Exactly, yeah. I've always, because like I said, I've always had ways of managing that, but yeah, now it's a lot harder than it's ever been before.
I can imagine. And I must say, when you smiled, a couple of the comments through the background, at least we're not the only ones binge watching, because I think even me, I found that that's my escapism. It's like, right, at the end of everything, I can just go in, watch a really absorbing programme for a couple of hours, or eat, which is also possible. So you've got to ask, because now you've been on your journey, and you know, those of us, I'm going to put your bio in this afterwards so our people can see it. What advice would you have given your younger self now you've got to this point?
I think, yeah, that's a really good question, because I actually think everything I've been through has really empowered me. Has empowered me through my journey. So even, and it's so cliche, because I hate cliches, and I hate that kind of excessive motivational talk, right? Oh yeah, just do anything. It's fine, you could do it, dream it, and you could. Yes, I like, you know, dream it, but I like practical and pragmatic advice. I think what I probably would have done is maybe saved a little bit more money, and understood the complexities of finance for business. I think that would have been the most important thing. Save a little bit more money. I think maybe, because I started my PR business without necessarily working in PR. So I think maybe, it's not a necessity, but maybe working in an agency. It's not an essential, but maybe giving it a try. Actually, I don't know, because I've heard so many horror stories of working in a PR agency, a big one, you know, big the PR agency, that I think maybe it was for the best that I did it the way I did it.
Maybe it's what you didn't know that's actually helped you.
Exactly.
I get that. So we're leaving this with just asking if there's one thing that you're happy to share with us that lots of people don't know about you.
Oh yeah, I had one and I can't remember what it was now. It's really bad. What do lots of people not know about me? I'm quite an open book. So that's a trick question. So is this like a bit of trivia? Like, is this about a fun fact or
fun fact? Something you won't regret tomorrow.
I was like, oh, let me not talk about a childhood crush or anything. Especially because my other half's in the other room. Okay, so I used to really love boxing. I never boxed physically myself, but because my dad didn't have any sons. So he used to make us watch boxing, and I used to be a really big boxing fan. And to this day, I still have a soft spot for certain boxers, and I still try to keep in the loop. But I'm really into. I used to really be into boxing, and at one point, I did say I wanted to start boxing, and I never did.
Don't put it out there. We could arrange a charity match.
Well, yeah, I feel like if it hadn't been for the lockdown or the pandemic, I may well have joined the boxing gym and started boxing.
Oh, I'm so impressed. I didn't expect that. So thank you for sharing it. Thank you for joining us, Kate. It's been a pleasure. And in fact, every time I read about you, I learn something more about what you've been up to, and you're doing some absolutely great work. Fantastic guest for us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, see you soon. Bye. So our second guest tonight is Miriam, and I've been told by 1,000 people that I've got loads of echoing on my system. So if you can hear that, I'm really sorry. I'm going to try a few things to change that while I bring Miriam into our room. Miriam, are you there? I've put that in the wrong place. Let's see. Aha, there she is. I've written Maria, but I meant Miriam. It's great that all of you really busy people have made time for us, so we're really, really thankful. So let's hope I can still get Miriam up.
Hello.
There you are. Hello, Miriam.
Hi there. Hi. Hopefully that's
welcome.
Doing the technology.
I am no judge to anyone about technology. Like, if it wasn't for the rest of my household, I wouldn't be able to cope in life. So I am trying that. It's the one thing I want to get out of lockdown, but at the end of it, I want to be much more digital in how I use tech. But I'm on baby steps at the moment. So well done for even getting in there.
Yeah, me as well. Shall I move the camera a bit? Is it like, can you see me? Or?
Yeah. It's a bit, because we're in boxes, you have to kind of reframe your face every so often. That's it. Perfect. Right. Yeah, plus we've got a good background. Thank you for joining us though, Miriam.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It was like, yeah, very honoured to be asked, really, especially being called Hidden Heroes. It was, yeah, thank you.
Just your service and what you do is an absolute, definite diamond of Hidden Heroes. I mean, Mum's Aid have been doing some incredible work across the borough for years, and I don't think Home Start can recognise our journey without bringing you in on that, because you've done. I mean, we've had the privilege of working with you, and I know our staff have had some of your team do some workshops with them, and the work you do is absolutely fantastic. It's so meaningful. So we are very grateful for you to even give us this time this evening. And I think it's an opportunity here for our guests to kind of hear about what you've been doing, because you've been really busy this year as well as
yeah. Well, firstly, I would like to, just as part of the Love Fest, because we love Home Start as much as you are saying that you love us, and Home Start have kind of been a part of our journey from, you know, right from the first place that we kind of offered counselling was in Home Start children's centres in Brookhill, and then even through like some of our sort of darker days when we'd kind of lost all of our funding, when there was kind of some austerity cuts, Home Start kind of kept faith with us and kept kind of, it wasn't a lot of money, but it was just enough to kind of keep us going, really, until times got better. So, you know, Mum's Aid are, yeah, we kind of really value the partnership that we've had with Home Start. So, yeah, and good to see you guys going from strength to strength as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's about investing in what we know is really needed in the borough and, you know, in our children and families. And as I said, the work you do with families is amazing. And I think it's been a bit like this time last year, we both, before the pandemic, we were talking about, right, we've got to try and do more digital and looking at our websites and that kind of back office stuff.
Yeah.
So, every time I see you on Twitter and I'm like, you're so on top of keeping up to date with what's going on. I'm like,
well,
yeah, you
help with it now. I've got some volunteers and we've got, yeah, Jane helping as well. So, yeah, but it's a team effort now, back in the day when it was me trying to do it on my own, but not very successfully, but yeah, hanging in there.
No, it's been really, well, I was going to say, what do you think is one of the greatest challenges during the pandemic? I mean, you've been doing so many things, but what's been quite challenging?
I think for us, the challenge really has just been like trying to keep up with the demand, because it has just really kind of gone off the scale. And we have almost doubled our provision of counselling, and yet there's still always more and more women just still keep coming, and it's trying to hold on to that when you can't, you know, you just haven't got enough spaces to give everybody a space. So that feels a challenge. And you know, I mean, so the children's centres, some of them are offering services now, but you know, during the kind of peak of the first lockdown, when there just wasn't anything, it felt really hard that sometimes we just felt like we were holding women without anywhere to refer them on to, which meant that we couldn't end the sessions. So I think that's kind of been the biggest challenge. But it's kind of, you know, there's also been lots of opportunities for us in kind of going online. We've got counsellors. We've got a counsellor who's working from Ireland, who's she was a volunteer counsellor with us and then moved back to Ireland. So she's been able to come back on board. We've got a counsellor working from Ipswich, who was actually somebody who came to one of my first postnatal groups when I ran a postnatal group at Mind about 20 years ago. And we never would have found each other if we hadn't had the opportunity to work online, because before that, if you couldn't come to Greenwich, you couldn't come and be a volunteer counsellor. So although there's been lots of challenges, and there continues to be lots of challenges, there's been lots of really positive things that the lockdown has offered as well.
Yeah, it is. You've been able to like redo your services in a different way, because I think had you talked about digital counselling, the take up was quite small in the beginning when we started looking at digital work and digital programs 2 years ago, and now it's got so much more engagement, and it's I think as much as it's been challenging, I can imagine that parents being able to access support from their home have actually removed some barriers.
It's both, really. It kind of, for some, it does mean that, you know, they haven't got to try and get on a bus with a double buggy and, you know, find the fares and all the rest of it. But there are still some women who, you know, because of their living conditions, they haven't got a private space, and so they are still being excluded from services. So for us, the ideal would be that, you know, that we're able to offer both. Roll on. Roll on, more places.
As we like all get ourselves, cliff edge ourselves out of this pandemic lockdown, I think it's going to be really interesting which bits of our services stay remote and which bits we bring on back. Fiona, I do look forward to seeing some more of your team around our buildings when that time comes as well.
Yeah.
So how have you, as a woman, as you know, you know, running a business, all of the different hats that you've got on at any one day. How have you been looking after yourself? What have been your well-being tips for you?
I kind of had an inkling you might ask this, and it's not my favourite question, because I think I'm not always so good at practicing what I preach, but I do make sure I get some fresh air and some sunlight. I'm a great believer in, or you know, cloud light, whatever, but I do really believe in kind of the power of vitamin D, not just for our immune system, but I've read something recently about it helps with sleep. So you know, for any of the women who might be listening who've like suffered with the insomnia that I think so many people have had during lockdown, make sure you're getting plenty of vitamin D. And then I use, for me, like to help me if ever I feel stressed, I use bark flowers a lot. So I don't know, like lots of people know about Rescue Remedy, for example.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of my go-to, to have some in water, and yeah, just keep like the overwhelm manageable. Yeah.
That's great top tips actually. So you've had about rescue. In fact, you did mention this before, and I have this on my desk all the time. it's just a little something that my friend Rahana she mixed up for us, but it does actually really give me a moment just to sit and breathe. And yeah, getting out, I wasn't doing that. I was like slave to the laptop for a few minutes and found myself going a little bit out of sorts.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
No,
yeah.
no, I think it is hard. I think I'm glad people heard you say that, because somebody who the work you do about therapy, about mental health, but just recognizing that actually sometimes it's not easy to use our toolbox on ourselves, even when we know what we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if what I was going to say, if now looking back on all of the successes you've had and the challenges, and you're going to look back on the, you know, probably the last decade, what would have been your shout out to your younger self, or your, as you were starting out this journey with Mum's Aid?
Oh, starting out the journey with Mum's Aid. Pack the kit bag, really. You know, in the early days I talked about that it kind of felt like I was going up a hill, pushing a boulder that kind of kept rolling back on me. And I think initially I probably didn't realize how steep a hill it was going to be and how big a boulder it was going to be. I mean, it's all the better for having kind of feeling like I'm getting to a bit of a plateau. I mean, there's still so much more to do, but yeah, so kind of just really being prepared to just keep going at it, really. Yeah, and I think like my theme song became, you know, I talked a little bit there about cuts, but that we kind of went through in 2016. Yeah, I always kind of used to sing that song to myself. I get knocked down, but I get up again. So like, I think if you're going to kind of try and achieve anything, you do need to be prepared that there will be knockbacks, but just keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah, I think I love the theme song, because you're gonna have to keep going, and I think doing what you do, and I mean, one of the things that I love about the work we do is that we get to see the impact of our actions on real people.
Absolutely.
And I know for me that's a driver, and when I see the work you do, and you do such close work with families, but actually even with your colleagues, and I've got to say, anyone that gets to work with Mum's Aid, is that we get soft counselling ourselves when we have conversations with you all, and you know, that kind of exploring gestures that help us to open up. And so as people to work with, it's really easy to work with you to talk about what we're trying to, you know, the goals we've got in common, but also how we can work together to overcome the challenges. And I think that's been one of the great things about your service, is that it's not just a business, it's actually the way you seem to live and the way you seem to operate with all people.
Mm.
So
Oh.
I'm just going to ask another question. So now as we come out of the COVID and you've seen some of the needs that your families have, what kind of programs or initiatives do you think you'll be doing with families to aid the kind of recovery that we're hoping for?
Sadly, I'm expecting the kind of mental health fallout to just kind of get even bigger, really. And, you know, so we are trying to think about how we're going to respond to that, to kind of support families that are not just in the perinatal period, because I think, you know, homeschooling is fairly, like, you know, done for many women, and so we're looking at kind of sort of seeing what other support we're going to be able to offer, yeah, to mums like that are not just mums of babies. And yeah, another area that I'm kind of really interested in is neurodiversity. So looking at how we could maybe support women where there's neurodiverse children in the family or young people.
Yeah, oh, very interesting.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to write it down and pick your brain about it later.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I mean, we all hope that wave 2 doesn't become a wave 3, and actually that some of our services can open up again, and we can get that support back for families. It feels I don't know, I think you end up feeling incredibly privileged for people to open up to us in the services that we run, that people can ask for help. I worry about the families that don't ask for help, or that don't know that help is available. And I'm sure we can come up with something. I always think you can't do it alone. The industry we work in is not about working in silos. It's about working together to support families. So when you said before about being able to refer people on, that really struck a chord, because actually that's what you do. We make sure that families still have some support when we pull back on some services. So it'd be really interesting to see what that looks like and what the next steps are. And I very much know that Mum's Aid will be a part of whatever our children's centres are doing next. It's always a pleasure.
Good, thank you. That's lovely to hear. Yeah.
No, definitely. There's lots to do. There's lots of babies to think about. So I just want to say thank you very much for joining us for a quick 15 minutes. For everybody that's joined, we can talk a lot about what Mum's Aid do, but it's in fact Miriam is probably better to give you a quick one-liner about what the service is. Got some new people on today.
So I suppose we'd at the moment be called a perinatal mental health support service. So we provide therapeutic services, mostly counselling, but also some groups for mums who are pregnant or have a baby under 2. And then we have our specialist service for young mums that are under 21. And that's also got an advocacy support element to that, and home visiting. Mums that are under 21. And that's also got an advocacy support element to that, and home visiting. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Miriam will be putting your details in this chat for everyone that wants to know about Mum's Aid some more. Hopefully you're going to find some Mum's Aid therapists in our children's centres if you follow Home Start Greenwich. The young mums are normally at Brook Hill.
Yeah. And
services run from Plumstead as well. Absolute pleasure. You've been an inspiration across our borough of someone that just keeps on going. You've rolled that stone up the hill, but made it a lot easier for some of us to roll our stones, because we've just followed your path. So thank you so much, Miriam, for all that you do for Greenwich and the surrounds. So thank you for joining us as well.
Well, thank you. Really delighted to have had a chance to talk to you. And I think, as I say, it's a pleasure to watch Home Start going from strength to strength as well, and we look forward to carrying on our partnership.
Definitely. Thank you ever so much. Have a lovely evening, and I'll catch you soon.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Oh, I love how all my team are commenting in the chat about Mum's Aid.
Bye.
For those of you still on, bye Miriam. While Miriam's leaving, I'm going to try and bring in our next guest. Councillor Denise Scott MacDonald. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Sorry about that. We should have said it needs to be on a mobile. Thank you for even setting up a new Instagram account to be able to do this with us.
So I set up an Instagram earlier on my iPad, thinking this is how I'm going to do it, and then I was literally trying to remember the password from earlier on. So hopefully I can. Yeah. Can you see me clearly? Okay.
Yeah, I can see you clearly. You've got a nice background. I can see you. Yeah. No, it's thank you so much for persevering as well. I wish I could talk you through it better, but I'm still learning how to use it myself.
Okay, good. All right, that's all right. So I'm watching your show. It's so fascinating. Miriam's story was absolutely brilliant, and I mean I learned something really useful and everything, and I was very touched and quite humbled by her story. And then your first guest, I didn't get her name. What was your first guest?
Ronke.
She was fantastic. Huge energy, amazing energy. I just thought was really brilliant. So yeah. Anyway.
No, thank you. I did think if she was my PR, I mean, I probably need some PR, but she's the kind of person that you want on your team. But yeah, great energy. Been doing it for years and years and years, and like it's got this fantastic entrepreneur in Greenwich that we all don't know about and we should know about.
Brilliant.
So yeah, no, we've, like I said, been saying to our other guests, this month we sat down, we thought about all of the hidden heroes who have done amazing pieces of work that have all directly or indirectly affected Homestart and some of our staff. And you are in this pile because you are a bit more of a public profile, but you actually champion a lot of things that make a difference for families in Greenwich. And we just wanted to say a thank you to you for that work that goes on in the background that many of us don't see and don't have to sit through all your committee meetings.
No, you don't have to go through all those boring meetings and those thick reports. You have to, yeah.
I must say, I've only come to a couple, and the paperwork, and I'm not, it's a couple of inches thick.
Yeah.
And I just think, I'm so pleased that there are people who are really pushing this, because I don't think I've got the heart. But the stuff you do makes such a big difference. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of space to talk about some of the things that you've been particularly involved in over the last year during the pandemic. Is there any nuggets that you want to share about work that's been happening in Greenwich?
Wow. I mean, obviously, COVID's dominated almost absolutely everything. Almost every department in the council has been dramatically impacted by COVID throughout the whole year, whether we had the lockdown and lifting of the lockdown or not. I think some of the great work has gone on with the Greenwich Hub. The hub was so crucial especially for people who were self-isolating, and also people who were shielding, and they did, and also it was just teams of volunteers, totally teams of volunteers. So if we had the list of people that the government gave us, then we had a list that some other of our stakeholders had given us, sort of, and plus there were people who phoned in who said, I've got COVID, I can't get out. And so people did all sorts of things like bring food to them, make sure they were taken care of, go shopping to get medical supplies. And it was absolutely amazing actually seeing the people behind all of that. Not only that, that work was also followed up. So if the hub knew that they had helped you, a few weeks later they went back and phoned you, and they had a thing to say, and they talked to people to make sure they were okay. So I think for that's been a real eye-opener. And also I met some of the volunteers. I mean, just absolutely dedicated and really, and some of them were furloughed. They furloughed and decided to volunteer with the COVID thing. And some of them said to me, I was at home and I was so bored and I just thought I just want to do something. And so that was, I think for me, that was very, very powerful, seeing all that. Watching the numbers going especially going up, was awful, and just kind of, I don't know, I get really angry and all sorts of things. However, in the council, we have what you called a team, just like in the national government. They have, I forgot what their team's called, but all the key people in the council and on the NHS meet regularly, literally in the morning. Especially at the height of the pandemic, we were meeting every morning, and we were literally firefighting. We were firefighting, like trying to make sure PPE, when we found out PPE weren't available in care homes or in certain places, we were trying to get that through. We were trying to work out things to do with people getting tested, different types of tests. So, you know, there's a lateral flow test, and some of you use all these words, and then the other ones, I think it's called PPE tests, and all those things. And, you know, and sometimes there was an outbreak at the university, and we had to kind of manage all that. So it was literally firefighting the whole time. I mean, right now things are a lot more calmer, so our focus is on the vaccination, rolling that out. And I'm really excited to say that those in their 80s and 70s and 60s, I think we're at 80% of them done. We're also doing some deep dive work, so we know there is some resistance within certain parts of the population, and people are resistant for a variety of reasons, and I'm not sitting there condemning them, because I think that's wrong. But at the same time, we've been going into certain communities using the faith leaders, and actually going into certain communities as well, like the Nepalese or some of the African churches and all that, and just having those conversations to try and get people vaccinated and things like that. So that's the next thing. That's what we're focused on right now. And we're hoping there won't be a variant, and you know, these new strands, which are, if the vaccine rolls out fine and there's no major new strand that create any disruption, I'll be very, very optimistic about the future.
It's amazing. I mean, it's very real in Greenwich. I think the support. So I know some of my team were putting on that we refer families to the hub, but also the hub got in contact with us. And I think what's been great is I spoke to my childcare who's shielding, and before I could even get there to say, do you want, I'm going shopping, they were like, do you know what, the hub, they rang me, like Greenwich rang me, and they've you know, they've been keeping in touch, and they've been reaching out and making sure I've got everything. And so it's actually a very real service that's making a difference. And it's really effective. So, and this is not just in the peak it happened, it's still happening for our viewers. It's still going on. The community hub is still open, and they are still supporting shielders. So it's been a fantastic piece of work. And I think at Home
and it's also got a lot of national attention too, and national government. But I think that work behind the hub began years ago with organisations like yourself. And as a council, we do fund proportionally much more than other local councils. And across London, there were different pictures, and some of it was quite patchy. And I'm actually quite proud in Greenwich. I think something like the hub existed because we have a relatively strong voluntary sector, a relatively strong, I think, spirit of volunteerism. I think in our borough that's what we have, but I don't think it magically appeared when COVID happened. I think it's just been this kind of long story that we've had as a borough that needs to get out more, I think, and hopefully people like you get that out there.
Oh, we will share this story. It's been great. I mean, Homestar, our whole ethos is based on the volunteer spirit, and you know what volunteers can bring and the added value they bring to all of the work we do.
Absolutely.
But some of the hub volunteers ended up coming over to Homestar, you know, when they went back to work. So it's been great for us to see that, and I think through the whole pandemic, that's really spurred us on, where you see other people giving up of their time to, you know, support the things that we're all aligned and doing to support children and families in Greenwich. So it's been, though blanket pandemic has been awful, some of the really fabulous pieces of work that's come out of it, and that community spirit. And I think, like you said, Greenwich is getting back what is already invested.
Yes, I think that's I totally agree with that. And I think in other boroughs you haven't seen it. I'm very proud of that. So.
Yeah, no, and you should be. It's a pleasure to work in Greenwich, and I used to live in Greenwich when I had my children, and I must say, it's it's been eye-opening coming out of Greenwich and seeing how it runs in everywhere else. It's not the same, and I'm sure I'll be trying to move back as soon as I can.
You know, sometimes on the political side, it doesn't always feel like that. You know, I do have to confess, because a lot of times my job is firefighting, and a lot of times, you know, when people contact the council, it's because something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And sometimes that something gone wrong is actually our fault as a council, something that we have messed up in a certain way, and then they call the councillor, and you get involved, and then you have to deal with a level of anger sometimes, and then you have to walk through it and try and work out what's gone wrong and try and support. So, you know, sometimes it doesn't feel that way. And then sometimes when I go outside of Greenwich, or I go to an event and someone goes, oh, you know, in Greenwich you do this, and I'm like, yes, we do that, and then they compliment it, and I'm like, oh wow, that's really good. So, you know, so it doesn't always feel that way sometimes on the political
waste.
side.
I've had around 3 conversations in the last couple of weeks with families who talked about the waste management service, that people have come and got rid of all the fly tipping, and they were really praising that, and they just, and you know, that whole there's one number and the service got sorted. So I think we're happy to say, you can be more modest, but we're happy to say that families do know that there is someone that they can call who will answer. None of us can get it right all the time, but the fact that there is a service there that people are able to use, it does go a long way.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'll take that back and make sure I tell the team.
Please do. So I've got to ask before we run out of time. So you've been doing this work, and can I just ask, how did you get into this role? Because it's quite a big role. So how did you get into this role within Greenwich?
Okay, so I've only been deputy leader since when was it? Just at the start of the pandemic. And sadly, what happened was the former deputy leader died, and she had cancer, and she died. She had cancer, and then we thought she had recovered from it, and then when the pandemic happened, it re-emerged, and it was quite awful. And then when she died, the leader of the council asked me to become the deputy leader, and then later on I stood for an internal election. But I think the question you want to ask me is, how do I get involved in politics? Yeah? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the question, which has probably led to where I am right now. I suppose I grew up in a household, in a home where this is where I put the credit to, is political debating around the dinner table was the norm. So I don't know about your household, but my household, there were 2 subjects that were vigorously debated, and that was religion and that was politics. I know not all households grow up that way, but that's, I think, where I cut my teeth. And I always thought, like, especially with the men in the family, my dad and my uncles and my cousins, they were all having I would say they did the political debating and the speaking more. But it was my mum, I would credit, was she actually did politics. So she did that. She was like a community worker and stuff. And so she did the actual works of how you transform people's lives, like that day-to-day things, you know. My mum would I'd be like, Mom, I got a friend at school, or I know someone I've been working with, but they have no family for Christmas. She'd come, bring them round, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And so I kind of grew up, you know, and my grandmother too, she would, you can't do it so much now, she would take in kids. And so she would have a neighbor or someone, and they're having a tough time in their marriage, or they have to travel for a job. My grandma would take them in. So I'll take care of your children. And it was really funny, because when I was really young, I would go around my grandmother's house. She lived in America. And I would go around to her house, and there'd be a boy or a girl sitting on the couch calling my grandma, Grandma. And I'd be like, Grandma, I don't know who this is, who this person. And my grandmother would be, shh, shh, don't pay them any mind. They're just going through a hard time right now. And I decided to help them out. So I grew up around all of that, which I think just really cemented a lot of things about politics and doing things in your community. And then later on, when I went to do my degree, I got involved with student union which also helped me to actually see things. I also got involved with a number of local community things. And then someone said, well, you should go and join the Labour Party. I don't mean to promote the party, and you know, get involved. And then I did join the Labour Party, and then I started volunteering. And then people were, you should be a councillor. And eventually I went on to be a councillor. And actually, when I became a councillor, it felt so natural. And it felt like all the different things I'd been doing in the past. So whether I was a school governor, so I was doing stuff like that. I was helping out with a number of human rights organisations, just volunteering stuff, you know, and plus stuff I did, debating around the dinner table, you know, signing petitions, all that. I felt like when I became a councillor, it made a lot of sense, and it was like, this is what I know what to do. This is what I've been trained to do, and this has really helped me. And yeah, so that's how it felt. It felt like I could suddenly breathe. Someone described, sometimes when you find that job or that place, and you kind of, and all the other times it's been struggling, but then when you find that place, and then you know, it just feels like, oh, I know what I'm doing. It just feels so comfortable. And then from there, I got onto the cabinet, and then I became a councillor in 2014. And then in 2015, I got onto the cabinet, which apparently is very rare for someone because I was a new councillor. And then eventually, I've held different portfolios. So I've led on the community groups and the voluntary sector. I did transport, and now I'm doing economy and skills, and as well as being deputy leader. So that's a handful.
It's a fantastic journey, and actually there's lots of bits that I didn't know, even in what you just said. So yeah, it's incredible. I love the debate starts at home. I think that's really interesting, because we talk about a lot when we work with our parents about communication and, you know, aspiration for young people, and that kind of being able to have a conversation openly, challenge, you know, because challenge is good, to be able to challenge, to be able to express your views. And it's fantastic to hear, even, you know, many moons ago, that you was able to have that dynamic at home. And it's interesting because a lot of political people they all recognise that. They all say, oh yeah, when I was a kid, blah 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 blah. And so it's actually very common for people who go into politics or community work, that debate around the dinner table. And and you refine it. And so you refine it more and more and more, and you sometimes have to learn to ask the right question in the right way, and actually know where, at what point in the political structure you ask those questions. And that's when it gets really, really, really interesting. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, in the link with communities, because I must say we've always been encouraged to have a voice and to use it for good, and to, you know, make a difference and support other people. So I feel really drawn in. Like I found my home in Home Start, because it's like,
you're very fortunate. Exactly. Yeah, I mean for you, I think you're very fortunate, because a lot of people don't find their love or the thing that they would really like to do. And I think if you found that thing that touches your heart, you're very, very fortunate, and very lucky and privileged. This is what I think, and that's wonderful to hear.
I know. No, I think it's a really good point. In fact, my partner, when I met him, he loved his job, and I hadn't met anyone that felt that way. You know, it's like it seeped out of him into every conversation, and I was like, oh, I hadn't got to that point where I had a job that I loved more than I loved getting paid for the job, if that makes sense. I've
been there too. Those jobs. Loads of times. So,
yeah. And eventually I realised what I really like doing and what I don't like doing, and I like people. Yes. And I love making a difference, and I love helping people. And yeah, I grew up around, you know, that kind of social care attitude. Is socially people as everyone's responsibility, and having that kind of social responsibility in a home. So it feels very natural to do the work that we do, even though I do more of the business end than the people end these days. But it's, you know, it's nice to know that we're all working to the same agenda. So in my few minutes left of you, I've got to ask, so how do you, even though this is something you're passionate about, how do you find time for you? What do you do for your well-being, or inspirational authors, or is there anything that you do for you?
All right, you know, I really, really wish I could say something really intellectual or really inspiring. Oh God, and sometimes I get asked this, but quite honestly, you know, your first speaker said it. I love TV. I absolutely love watching it, but I don't get a lot of time to watch TV. I mean, I literally, it's so hard. Even tonight, I probably won't get a chance to watch TV. But I love just vegging out and I love one of my favourite shows. I remember I was on this sort of panel, and everybody's been really intellectual. And they were like, "Go on, Denise, what do you like? What's your favourite show?" And I just went, "I love Gogglebox," and I do. I just love sometimes when I'm tired and exhausted, I collapse on the couch, turn the TV on, and then I switch through the dial, and the Gogglebox comes on, and I just sit there and I just laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh, and I quite like doing that sometimes, you know. So yeah, so that's how I relax. And but I do think in your life it's really important that you have people outside of politics, especially. So I do have a network of friends that I try to, and I make an effort to say, okay, I've got to go out with them. And then I speak very little about politics in there. And I think that's really important. Like family and certain friends group helps to keep you a little bit more sane. But again, I don't get much time to do that. So it just has to be Gogglebox for now. So, sorry, I'm terrible.
I do wonder, once we're all allowed out, are we all going to go out a bit more, or are we going to go out a bit less? I don't know yet. I'm trying to work out.
Oh, I don't know. I think I'm going to be going out. So, I'm going to go out. I'm just like, I don't know about you, but lockdown.
Just say yes to everything. I think, yeah, I must admit we've had a lot of times when we're thinking, oh, what's going to come next? What, like you said, you can't always have an intellectual answer for everything. Sometimes you just got to be real. And I think that the pandemic and the lockdown has made people really simple in a
yes.
Just really simple. I was saying last week I've got into gardening. Like I like gardens that look nice, but I'm not green fingered. I kill pot plants regularly. But actually I just think I like the feel of the earth, and I've worked out that I quite like sticky things and making Play-Doh, or just making a bit of a mess. Like I'm quite into tactile things, and I think we've just all got a little bit more simple about what makes us happy. It can be quite a lot less than it probably we would have had before. Yeah.
I think it's really important that we do. You get that you can't, because all of us have been stripped away of a lot of things that have been crowding in, and so it's. I think a lot of people will look back on this time and say, this is the time when I discovered this, or. And I know one or two people, of my friends, have made career changes because of pandemic, and they suddenly realised they didn't want to spend all their energy following that particular thing, and so I know there's been people who've just been doing a whole reassessment, but it's probably because we can't do anything else. Everything's been sort of stripped away, and you're just left with yourself. And,
I love that. Yeah, I love that. You're just left with yourself. I think that's exactly it. I think, and I think what Miriam talked about before is about like the mental health needs, because sometimes you'll be left to yourself. You've got a little bit too deep, or things have come up that you haven't thought about before, or haven't. When you're on like life is so busy, you're on this treadmill, you don't really have time sometimes for juggling families, work, everything else. You don't have time to like really think about it. But I think Hazel just said it. It's been a great time for reflection, whether you've wanted to reflect or not. The time has been there.
Yeah. And I mean, what she said about mental health, and I do think, I mean, me and the leader of the council were on a Zoom call with a group of teenagers, and when the Zoom call began, all their heads were down, and you could see they were all there was like this big screen, and you could tell they were all in their bedrooms. Most of them were all in their bedrooms, and then Danny said, he goes, how are you feeling? Are you okay? And they nodded their head. There was no sound. And then he went, do you miss school and your friends? And they went, yeah, And I just thought my heart just went out to all these teenagers. And then gradually, as we began to talk to them, they all began to sort of slowly open up. I mean, by the end of the Zoom, they were actually smiling and happy. And they were actually talking and communicating with each other across the Zoom and everything like that. But I think for them, it was just so traumatic that literally everything just shut down completely, you know, and even though, yes, you may not like going to school sometimes, or some people I loved going to school, but I know there's some people don't like going to school. So, you know, but your whole life shuts down and your life is just reduced to your bedroom. That's what I thought when I looked at the kids. Well, their whole life now is reduced to a bedroom and a screen, and that's it. When before they could just go on the road and do this, and, you know, take the long walk from school, get after school clubs, you know, and things like that. So, but yeah, and I think, go on.
No, I think that's been really real. I know so my children are 9 and 5, and my son isn't that social, but it took him around a year to work out that he's missing people. But my 5-year-old actually had a really big cry the other day, and she just said, I just miss having my friends and being able to play. And she's like, the only people I can play with are in this house, and you don't like what I like because you're not 5. So, like, I thought we've been really trying to play dollies, cowboys, and everything else, but it's that kind of that they just want that connection.
I know.
And it's been a long time, and we've talked a lot in Home Start about loss, and about this period of time being there's been a lot of loss of contact, loss of people, loss of life, and just how that kind of, you can't grieve that like in a traditional way. So people are things are coming out in very different ways, and whether it's been children's behaviour or adults' behaviour. I know I've had some random cries of myself, which have caught me by surprise. Like, what's this about? I was laughing a few seconds ago, but I think we've just got to get used to it. But I think what's interesting is how everybody's feeling that week when they announce like the stages of what going back to some kind of normal looks like, and the children going back, and you can feel that parents feel slightly more relaxed. Children being able to access school. And some things that feel a little bit more the same. The things that you hated, like the school run.
I don't know about you. I hate the school run. It's not bad. My son's 18, but I remember the school run, and I just remember, and also he was just so slow walking down the road, and it was just nightmare. And anyway, but I can just imagine how it must be like a relief that it's happening again.
Well, before I had children, I remember watching, or my children were very little, and Michael McIntyre had this whole sketch about people that don't have kids and how easy their lives are, and he talked about how you say brush your teeth and put your shoes on, and you're just like, you can leave the house and they still haven't got their shoes on. And I didn't understand the sketch until having kids, and now I'm like, literally all my neighbours must hear me say, just put the shoes on. We've even got in the car and got halfway to school and they haven't got their shoes in. We've had some real situations when I have to question my own motherhood and my own skills. So it's been interesting, but thank you so much for joining us. It's been lovely talking to you and hearing about what you do, and thank you for all you've been doing behind the scenes in supporting the community. And
I'd love to come when this whole thing lifts. I'd love to come down and see you guys.
Please do.
Face to face, and also if there are events, let me know too. Don't but I'd love to come down and just
we would love to have you.
Thank you.
And my team's agreeing. I can see a few of them. Sorry, clap hands. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I hope you get some really bad TV in.
You're not gonna let me live that down.
No, it's on the wall now. Thank you for joining us, and thank everyone else for logging in this evening. I hope you've learned a little bit more about 3 of our hidden heroes in Greenwich who really make a difference for our children and families. So we're hoping to make this a regular thing, because there is just so much great work that happens that we all don't know about. So thank you for joining us, Denise. Have a lovely evening, and thank you to everyone else, and good night.
Night.
See you all. Bye.
Bye.